They bought a derelict 7-bedroom mansion from the Catholic Church for $410,000, moved to a city they'd never lived in, and started ripping the walls apart at 26 and 27 years old, with no professional renovation background. The couple behind Belgrave Villa Renovation, Millie and Louis, spent the better part of 2 years answering one question in the comments section of every single video they ever posted. By the time they finally gave the internet the answer it had been waiting for, 2 million people were watching. There is a building in the uplands area of Swansea, South Wales, that sat untouched for over 5 years before Millie and Louis ever set foot inside it. It wasn't just any empty property. This was a 7-bedroom Victorian villa built in 1859, the kind of building that makes structural engineers pause and estate agents choose their words carefully. Over its 165-year life, it had been a private home, a doctor's surgery, and most recently the residence of a Catholic bishop. The church had owned it for years. When they finally decided to sell, the building had been sitting empty long enough that nature had started the renovation process on its own terms. That's the house Millie and Louis bought in March 2024. The price was $410,000, a figure that sounds like a bargain until you walk inside and understand exactly what that number didn't include. They were 26 and 27 years old at the time of purchase. No professional building background, no family construction business to call on. Just 2 young people who had looked at a derelict Victorian mansion, done the sums, and concluded this was a rational decision to make. What drove that decision isn't entirely clear. What is clear is that from the moment they picked up the keys, they started filming. Not because they had a content strategy mapped out, not because someone had told them their renovation journey had viral potential. They just started documenting it. The stripped floorboards, the peeled-back brickwork, the rooms that hadn't been opened in years, they uploaded to Instagram first, then TikTok. A slow build at the beginning, the kind of growth that feels invisible until suddenly it isn't. And here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got, until now. The video that changed everything for Millie and Louis wasn't a before and after transformation. It wasn't a budgeting breakdown or a satisfying time-lapse. It was 4 months into the renovation, and they were simply lifting floorboards. What they found underneath those floorboards, and inside the sealed-off doorways and the hidden corners of a building that had housed a bishop, turned a renovation account into something much harder to look away from. A Christmas card from 1921, found hidden between the joists on the top floor. A newspaper article from 1925 covering the death of Alexandra of Denmark, Queen Consort to the United Kingdom, discovered under the master bedroom floor, Polish from the 1800s, in what had once been a storage room. A World War II helmet insert, uncovered when they unblocked a doorway that someone had sealed with brickwork at some point in the last 8 decades, for reasons nobody still alive could explain. Then there was the certificate. A certificate of authenticity for a piece of the cross of Christ, found in a drawer. The cross itself was not with it. Millie posted the video on April 14, 2024. It has since been viewed more than 30 million times. "Going to start the Belgrave Museum," she wrote in the caption. Thousands of people agreed it was a good idea. What the video did, beyond the obvious reach, was reframe the entire project in the minds of the people watching it. This wasn't just a renovation. This was an archaeological dig through layers of Welsh history, with 2 young people in their mid-20s serving as the excavators. The comments section transformed almost overnight. People weren't just watching to see what the kitchen would look like when it was finished. They were watching because this building had a life before them, and every week brought another piece of it to the surface. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. By the time the viral video had reached its first 10 million views, Millie and Louis had a problem that most renovation creators never encounter. Their audience wasn't just following the renovation. They were invested in the relationship behind it. 2 young people, unmarried, no last names revealed publicly, renovating a building together that they described from the beginning as their future home. The comment section processed this in real time. Were they together? Would they make it through the stress of a project this size? Was the whole thing funded somehow? A family inheritance? A trust fund? Money coming from somewhere the camera wasn't pointing? These questions never disappeared. They appeared in different forms across different platforms, week after week, episode after episode. Some followers were supportive and curious. Others were skeptical in the way that internet audiences often become when something looks too clean, too committed, too unlikely. Millie and Louis answered most of these questions the same way, by posting every Wednesday on YouTube, by showing the grime and the miscalculations and the rooms that weren't ready to be shown yet, By being present on camera through the slow, unglamorous middle sections of a project like this, when the initial excitement has worn off, but the finished rooms are still months away. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around them saw coming. Around April 2025, roughly a year into the renovation, someone who had been watching Millie and Louis from across the world decided to do something about what they perceived as a problem. This person, anonymous, never identified, located approximately 15,000 kilometers from Swansea, South Wales, wrote an email to building control authorities in the city. The complaint was specific. Millie and Louis, the email alleged, had failed to install a waterproof membrane in their bathroom renovation. This, the complainant noted, was a violation of building standards. The standards they were citing were Australian. Millie addressed it in a video shortly after. "I have a bone to pick," she told her audience. "We had a visit from building control in Swansea, who had received just a little email from across the world." She described the inspector arriving, walking through the bathroom, examining the work, and signing it off. The inspector had no issues with what they had done. The complaint was unfounded. The bathroom was fine. What happened in the comment section afterward is worth noting. Australian followers flooded the video with apologies on behalf of their country. "As an Australian, apologies, every country has them, I guess," one person wrote. "On behalf of all Australians, I apologize for that," another replied. The incident itself was minor in isolation. The inspector came, looked, left. No action was taken. But what the moment revealed was the scale of the scrutiny that follows a renovation project when millions of people are watching. Every decision, the materials, the methods, the sequence of work, is assessed by an audience with varying levels of expertise and varying levels of goodwill. Millie brushed it off publicly. Louis, speaking to media around the same period, addressed Swansea's building control directly in the video. "To British building standards," was the phrase that followed. The renovation continued. Every Wednesday, a new episode. Most people who know this story stop here. But the real story starts right now. By the time November 2025 arrived, Millie and Louis had been filming inside Belgrave Villa for the better part of 18 months. They uploaded a house tour, their first proper room-by-room walkthrough of the building since they'd bought it. 6 bedrooms now partially or fully complete. Original features restored where possible. New plumbing running through walls that had been stripped back to stone. The title of that video, Our Victorian Villa After 18 Months of Renovation. It sits as one of the most viewed pieces of content in the channel's history. Not because of any single dramatic reveal, but because of what it represented. This was the same building that had looked uninhabitable in March 2024. The same rooms where they'd found a WWI helmet behind a bricked-over doorway. The same floors under which a newspaper from 1925 had been hidden for 100 years. By this point, the social accounts told a story of their own. Instagram, 2 million followers. TikTok, 396,000 followers, and 3.4 million likes. YouTube, a channel posting every Wednesday, an audience that had grown from nothing into one of the most consistently engaged renovation communities on the platform. ITV News had covered them around February 2025, when a journalist came to Swansea to check in on their progress at the 10-month mark. The framing of that coverage, that they were finally getting to the fun part of designing the rooms, captured exactly where they were in the arc of the project. Not finished, but visibly moving toward an endpoint that had once seemed impractical. 2 million people had followed from the start, and the one question underneath almost every video was still sitting there, unanswered. Were they actually going to live in it? And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Here is the thing about long-running renovation content that creators rarely discuss openly. The audience's relationship with a project like this changes over time. In the beginning, people watch because the premise is compelling. 2 young people, a derelict Victorian mansion, a camera rolling. They stay because of the discoveries, the setbacks, the weekly progress. But somewhere around the 18-month mark, something shifts. The investment becomes personal. The comment section starts to reflect something beyond interest in tile choices or structural decisions. People begin to ask questions that reveal how much they've put into the story. Are Millie and Louis still together? Is the money holding out? Is this a project that's actually going to end? Or will it become one of those channels that posts forever without ever crossing the finish line? These are the rumors that renovation audiences generate. Not malicious ones, mostly. Just the natural speculation that forms when millions of people watch 2 people live their lives in real time and start to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. The rumors about Belgrave Villa covered most of the usual territory. Some viewers were convinced the budget had collapsed at some point and outside financing had come in. Others were certain Millie and Louis had gone through some kind of relationship difficulty mid-project, the theory being that certain episodes showed more tension than others. A consistent thread in the comments section of multiple videos asked directly, "Are you two actually going to move in, or is this going to be sold?" The answer came not in a dramatic announcement video. It came in a TikTok post, understated and direct. "Thanks for this last year. We've officially finished moving, so normal updates will now resume." They moved in, it was done. She never talked about this publicly, until now. The financial dimension of the Belgrave Villa project is one of the least discussed aspects of a story that has attracted enormous public attention. The purchase price was $410,000. The property came from the Catholic Church. It had been sitting empty for over 5 years, and the structural state of a 165-year-old building that has been unoccupied for half a decade is rarely straightforward. The original brickwork, the Victorian-era plumbing, the roof, each of these categories represents a line of expenditure that doesn't get captured in a single figure. What Millie and Louis built their content around, by design or by instinct, was the labor-first approach. Episode after episode documented them doing the work themselves rather than outsourcing it. The debate about a $12,000 professional quote versus a DIY approach became one of the most commented upon moments in the channel's history, with followers split between those who admired the commitment and those who questioned the wisdom. That tension, between the aspirational and the practical, is what has kept the channel compelling across 2 years and over 80 episodes on YouTube. The audience isn't just watching a renovation. They're watching two people in their mid-20s make real financial decisions about a real building in real time, with the full weight of public opinion pressing against every choice. There are renovation channels on YouTube where the budget is never mentioned, the mistakes are edited out, and the process looks seamless. Belgrave Villa is not that channel. The plumbing problems appear on screen. The cost debates happen in front of the camera. The building inspector video exists because they chose to address it rather than pretend it hadn't happened. That editorial decision, transparency over polish, is the specific reason 2 million people follow Millie and Louis on Instagram, not despite the problems, because of them. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. The rumors about Belgrave Villa, the ones that had circulated in comment sections and been typed and deleted and retyped across 2 years of weekly videos, were never about anything dramatic. There was no crew departure, no announced split, no financial collapse that had to be managed behind the scenes, no second channel built on a different identity. What the audience had been asking, underneath all the speculation, was a simpler question than it appeared. Can two young people in their mid-20s, with no professional background in construction, take a building that had been sitting empty for 5 years and turn it into somewhere they actually want to live? Not a show home, not a flip they're going to put back on the market, a home. The answer, confirmed in early 2026, after 2 years of weekly documentation, is yes. That is what the renovation finally confirmed. Not a relationship status, not a budget figure, not a dramatic reversal of the premise everyone had signed up for in March 2024. The rumor that finally got put to rest was the simplest one, the one that asks whether people who start things this big actually finish them. Millie and Louis finished it. A 7-bedroom Victorian villa built in 1859, formerly owned by the Catholic Church, formerly the residence of a bishop, closed up for 5 years, sold for $410,000 to two people in their mid-20s who had never renovated a building before, is now someone's home, their home, with a kitchen that took until episode 50 to complete, and fireplaces restored with original tiles that the audience helped them track down, and floors that once hid a Christmas card from 1921 and a newspaper from a century ago. The building that no one else wanted is now lived in, and 2 million people got to watch it happen. The story of Belgrave Villa is ultimately not about Victorian architecture or Irish tiles or an anonymous building complaint filed from the other side of the world. It's about what happens when two people in their mid-20s decide to do something impractical in public and refuse to stop. Millie and Louis are now living in the building they bought 2 years ago. The channel continues to post every Wednesday, with the next chapter, what a 7-bedroom Victorian villa looks like once someone is actually living inside it, still unfolding in real time. The structure is finished. The story isn't. Here's the question worth leaving with. Do you think two people in their mid-20s buying a derelict Victorian mansion and renovating it themselves is an inspiring thing to watch? Or does the internet following make the whole thing feel less real? Drop that below.